Good evening, everybody. Sorry for the delay. We're having bad weather here, and we had some issues getting ready to get on. I didn't like the fact that the everything looked a little bit off as we had a storm here today. Everything looks a little bit yellow and weird. We'll figure that out. I don't know what's going on with that, but I just wanted to make sure things looked as good as they possibly could. Got things all over my desk. Before we got ready to get on here tonight to talk about history. If you're new to this program, this is the Erudition Network. This is the Erudition Network Interactive Black History and Knowledge Session. I am your host, Eddie Phillips, and we are here every Thursday to talk about history, to give knowledge and discuss things related to history every Thursday night. I thought I had I had a plan. I did earlier today on what I wanted to talk about. And as always seems to happen lately, something came up over the last 24 hours. Pardon me, I'm going to clean my glasses. Over the last 24 hours that made me rethink what I was going to talk about. We really try our best on this program to give you a good look at history, both in its things that are easy to talk about and things that are hard to talk about. And often what happens is people only seem to know some of the history that we deal with in this country. I guess that's with any history, though, if you're invested in it. When you're invested in history, rather it be personal, rather it be communal, you want to be able to discuss it, talk about it, and you spend time with it. Too often, though, in our schools, we are having a problem in teaching factual, realistic history. And unfortunately, it's harming us. It's harming us. I got a friend of mine who sent me a link and said he'd like to come on. And, I'm always hoping people to come on for Erudition. So I'm going to send you that link, my brother. Let me first get through this intro. And I do want your thoughts on what we're going to talk about tonight. We have a problem in sharing our history, and it's because we think that it's going to hurt us, it's going to harm us, it's going to make us afraid. But what it really is doing is it's separating us, because it's making us follow lunacy, or as I like to call it in my words, foolery. We spend so much of our time following foolery that we get lost in what we consider to be these sectarian divisions, rather it be politics, rather it be church, rather whatever it may be. And tonight I wanted to talk about something that just came up. I'm sure that some of people in my audience, you don't gravitate towards country music. Everybody doesn't, just like everybody doesn't gravitate to hip hop or different types of music. Everybody has their own different choices and things that they like. But here's the thing. We got to be smarter on what we're doing. Over the last few days, we have seen so much stuff pop up with whether it be political, rather it be social, but in the end of it, there's still some tie. Hi, Tina. I don't know what the old boy is for. And so we just got to do better, right? So I'm gonna get into this. The other day, one of our country music, one of our singers, one of the folks out here, he released a song, a video. Now, the song had been out for quite some time, but he released this song video, and it kind of upset a lot of people. And I like to call some people just lazy. They pulled up the initial history, but they didn't. In my opinion, it's my opinion, they didn't go deep enough and they didn't explain enough. And I think that is one of the reasons why this individual, when he did it, whether it's political motivations, whatever, it was easy for him to get caught into this. Hey, okay, Tracy, I see you in the back. Hey, give me a thumbs up when you're ready, and I'll bring you on. You good, brother? Okay, I'm gonna bring you on. This is my brother from another mother. Hey, Tracy, can you hear me?
Hey, I can hear you, Eddie. How you doing?
I'm good, man. I'm good.
Yeah.
I'm just doing the intro for this, man. I didn't want to talk about this, right? But there is some history here that we need to talk about. And I think that a lot of people don't know the history. Tina said hi. Don't know the history of what went on in this area of the country, right? And I'm a believer, for one, because I have a film background, and I'm also a believer because I have a history background, that some things don't happen in a vacuum, right? Rather it was his choice or somebody else's choice. Things don't always happen in a vacuum. It's just somebody went, this kind of fits, right? And you have to be careful of that. Now, what I'm talking about is, what is it, Jason Aldean? He released his video for Try That in a Small Town, right? And I saw a clip earlier today. I'm going to share that clip real quick. I saw a thing earlier today where somebody had put him and his, I guess it's his wife, saying they were unapologetic about what was going on, right? And how it was skyrocketing because there's people in the country on the French side of it that feel like, hey, this is all good, right? This is all good. But here's the thing. I'm not going to play the video. You can go out and read and watch Jason Aldean's video on your own. But I will probably talk about some of the lyrics that are in this particular song, because to me, some of them were a little disturbing. And Tracy, I'll get your thoughts on it in a moment. But some of them were a little disturbing just because of the things that we've had. One of the things that stood up to me immediately is when he said, "Full of good old boys raised upright." It kind of disturbed me a little bit. Another line from his song when he says, "See how far down the road you get down," and a country with Ahmaud Arbery being shot jogging down the road. Those kind of lyrics can be taken many different ways, right? And And when we're talking about a small town, you guys may have seen over the last week or two, I did a thing on sundown towns where some people were keeping black folks and people of color and even some poor whites out of certain towns, right? So all of those things put it together in our history kind of made me uncomfortable with the song when I just watched it, right? And what is he talking about, right? It's going to be taken many different ways. Tracy, what's your thoughts on it?
Well, I think this, and I alluded it to you yesterday in a comment on your personal post, but I think this song and the reactions from both sides of the political aisle really highlight and is a prime example of the division based on propaganda, in my opinion. For instance, I'm originally from Lubbock, Texas, it's not a small town; it's a small city. But of course, they compare themselves to Dallas and Houston, so they think of themselves sometimes as a small town, but they really aren't. And I kind of understand, and it bothers me a little bit that I understand this, to be honest with you. I understand why people do not understand why this song is offensive or, problematic. I mean, even he admitted, for instance, that he had zero idea that there was a lynching on the steps of the courthouse that was featured in his video. But to give you what I see from the small town, quote that, mentality, the good old boys being raised right. They think they're being raised in the house of the Lord. They're good Christians, good Southern values of treating your neighbors right. And I remember when those days, were true. I remember when you could go to a coffee shop and you could just sit down and start talking with anybody, and they didn't mean you harm. They didn't mean anybody any harm at all. The problem is they don't understand how that imagery has affected another group of people, because they don't understand it. Many of them didn't participate in it, and they look at themselves as the good guy. They're just small town pride, American flag waving, support World War II kind of Americans. They just don't understand it because they've never experienced it. I mean, if you think about small towns, cable is new, so they're listening to talk radio more than anything when they want to get real perspective on things, and that is not something that is typically democratic. It's typically, in all honesty, I understand where every bit of this is offensive and why it's problematic, but I also understand why some people don't understand it, because they think they're just being good old boys, Dukes of Hazzard, good boys, loving everybody.
The Robin Hood and doing good. I do see. I think when I initially posted it, I said, I just want to honor this opinion of it, because I could see some parts of that, in my experience with because I don't look at it just on one side, right? So I try to see the other side of it. But then I did read too that he didn't know some of the history behind the site area, any of that, and how that could be very offensive to different demographics of people because of the things that have happened in that area of the country. But I'm going to share again. I'm not going to show his video, but I pulled just randomly some of the images, right? Some of the images from his video, right? It's problematic and with me because it teaches the old cowboy lynch mob. Imagery is everything, right? And when you get people, even though if the words, you're right, they're problematic in themselves, some of them, that image, right? What you're trying to portray, the director knew that, right? The director knows exactly what he's trying to support, American flag overlaid with the police and all of this. But when you get down to those lyrics, right? I just think that Jason Aldean and other disclosure is he was there in the vicinity of a mass shooting in this country, right? where somebody went and killed, what is it? I think almost 60 some people, 54 people, I believe it was in Vegas. I would think that with that kind of a background, you would be very sensitive to the images of guys pulling out guns. And I get it. I get the small town thing. I get the idea, but with all of the shootings going on in this country, with all of the innocent people being killed and, hurt, I just think that images like this one are problematic, right? Images like the good old boys walking back from the mud hole with their weapons, those things are problematic. And you can't be completely, because my other problem with this, Tracy, is I got a film background. So I know that you saw the rough cut and the edit cut, right? So given the sensitivity of what's going on, seeing stuff like this should have been like, no, I don't think this is the time to do this, right?
And you know what? In an educated circle, I think you're right. And I think people who are putting something out with an agenda would see that, right? But the only thing you're missing from those videos you just showed of the guys hunting and stuff is the Andy Griffith whistle, man, really. I mean, as far as they're concerned, that's all they're missing. Because you got to remember, again, I'm just trying to look at it from a perspective of somebody who doesn't know history better.
Yeah.
And that is the idea that, no, we're not the bad guys. We don't have any problem with any of those people. We are just we just are all American flag and apple pie. And I think a lot of it was that. Now, was a lot of the BLM protest imagery intentional? I'm certain it was.
Yeah.
Although they did show white protesters from that, as a central part. So they were trying, I believe, to make an attempt to not make it look racial, even though it still comes across as racial. Yeah. You see what I'm saying? I think, which interesting enough, the only people that were most of the people that were actually convicted of looting and damaging during the BLM riots were actually white instigators.
Yeah.
The only ones that they really put through the legal system anyway. But again, regardless, I'm just trying to look at it from a perspective of somebody who is not a racist and who does not experience the things that these people, that the BLM protests were protesting against. And they do think of themselves as just good, moral, small town values, right? Where you look for each other. I'm trying to look at it from that point of view, and I can see where the mistake is. And one of the reasons why I think they don't see it is because the propaganda they listen to. The evil people out there are the people leading BLM. They're the Antifa crowd. They're the evil liberals. You know what I mean? It's that if that's what you listen to all day long and you think of yourself as a good guy and a good person and all your neighbors are good people and you're not the things that are being complained about, at least you feel you're not, I can understand why doing something like this may seem like a patriotic move and not understand the ramifications of what you're putting out or where the hate is drawn. And again, I do believe this is a result of our political system bipolarness right now and the propaganda coming out. I can also say that, to me, I mean, I can understand, like I said, why people are angry about it. But, I haven't seen any of this from Jason Aldean in the past.
Yeah.
So, one of the things that we like to look at too, right, is corroboration. When you talk about history, right? Can you corroborate some of this stuff?
Corroborate it, yeah.
I can't see anything in anything he's put out before personally. And again, I'm not somebody who can tell you every album.
I'm not really into him either. Yeah.
He's had some good songs, but is there any indication that he's this kind of guy in the past? I'm not sure I've seen it, but you never know. You never know.
Yeah, you never know. But what I will say is that I think the reason why I decided that it should be something to talk about, I see your comment, Eric, about Brandon and assumptions and stuff made. And that's what we're not trying to do. Not trying to make assumptions. I look at this as an issue because I think the more we hide or we try to get away from teaching history, the more people don't know, right? And I think when situations like this happen, I think it's a great time to get out and learn that history. If he didn't know about Henry Coate being killed in front of that courthouse, okay, but now that you know that, right? Now that you are aware of that, you should have and I'm not saying he doesn't. You should have a better understanding of how people can look at that, right? How people can see that. I pulled one of the plaques from that area because another thing that I got mad about, America, period, we get really lazy, right? Everybody went for the quick. Let's talk about Henry Coate and throw that out there because that was easy to do, right? If you know anything about lynchings and things in that area, that was easy to do. But there are many people who died, right, who were murdered by the Klan in those areas, both black and white, right? People often forgetting that the Klan killed both white and black people, right? Especially the early Klan. And we tend to only see it one way. And we also don't realize that these landmarks and these places that we use as our American example, some of them have very dark history. And so I pulled that image to show how many people have been affected in the area of Columbia. But probably the two most notable people are those last two, Henry Coate and Cordy Cheek, both young men at different times. But I gravitate towards them because, and like me and you, we are military people, right? We've served our country and we know how hard that is on our families, on us physically. And these men were killed post World War I and post World War II. And it was because of, at the time, the people come back from war. I've defended my country. I want to be treated a certain way, right? And our communities look to have things happen a certain way. And so when I look at those cases and these things, I wanted to get into it and let people understand. Even I doubt Jason Aldean will watch this podcast, but I want folks who are thinking that people are being just unjustified in this to understand that there is real history here. There's real history here that needs to be unpacked, and not lazy history, right? And what I mean by lazy history is CNN, Fox News, MSNBC. They're going to always go to the easy thing, man. Oh, yeah, there was a guy that was lynched there at 18 or 19, whatever, and that's all they're going to think about.
Mm-hmm.
But Columbia, Tennessee, that area has a deep, deep history, right? Yeah, Henry Coate was killed there. He was 18 years old. A mob of over about close to 300 people grabbed him, and they lynched him on that site. And it is significant because when he was lynched at the courthouse in Columbia, it was on Armistice Day. As a matter of fact, the armistice, the decorations and everything were still up as they hung his body and did what they did. So it was brutal. And I don't want to go into the whole brutality, the hammers and cutting, but the fact of the matter is that definitely happened. And it happened a lot because the community, the good old boys, the people who felt there, didn't really want blacks of any, male or female, feeling empowered. And that's just the truth of it. The disturbing image that aligns to Jason Aldean is that the police at the time participated, as often was the case, in the lynching. Right, they're the ones who kind of folded, and it's crazy because when you watch this, it almost is like Intruder in the Dust, where there's a woman who stands up and says, "Hey, I'm not going to let this happen." But when they threatened to blow up the police station, she gave them the keys that allowed these people to go out and take this man. Now, that was November 13th, 1927. That's where everybody on social media, you'll see it, CNN and news people are talking about. And that's the history of that. Have you seen any of that, Tracy?
I have not seen that particular story. I have to admit. I mean, there's hundreds of similar stories that I've seen, but no, I have not seen that particular story. I mean, again, I think a lot of times people will look at the fact that they don't know one particular thing in history and think, well, that was just an isolated incident then. Okay, because you're telling me that one thing. I think the bigger point to take from stories like that is not that one thing happened, is that thing happened hundreds of times,
yes,
even thousands of times.
Yes.
And I'm not sure it is helpful to the conversation to know the specifics of every instance, just to know that it happened so many times, because there are thousands of people that this affected, right? Mm-hmm. And that's just me. And sometimes just the understanding the principle and the idea is far better than understanding the details or memorizing the details of something like that. But yeah, no, this is a new story for me. But as soon as you get the idea of what a lynching is, because you've seen hundreds of pictures of these things, then that should be all you need to know. You shouldn't need to know the name of anyone. I mean, you don't need to know the name of any one particular person to understand that it was cruel and wrong, and that we need to not have these again, and we need to not, use this imagery anymore. Mm-hmm. And that's just my personal thing. I understand, but we need people who will, like you, will go through and learn all these details so that we can be reminded of them every now and then. But
no, I get both sides of it, and I see where you're coming from. I think that we know what lynchings are. There's been enough that people have talked about it. I don't know if we should always get into the specifics. And I tell people what I mean by the specifics is what was done to the victim. I don't think that we need to get so deep into that all the time. But what I do think, I remember Dick Gregory once said one time, he said that racism, he wasn't talking about just white racism, black, he was talking about racism, period, has a long memory. And you have to understand that the people who still participate in racism or bigotry, they tell a story to those who will listen to them. And they tell a story in order to ingratiate themselves to folks, in order to make people feel better about their lot in life, whatever it may be. And so you run into this situation where people, if they knew a lot more, they were less likely. They're like, man, I didn't know that happened. Because I tend to try to believe in the goodness of people. I do try to believe that people inherently are good. They want to be good. And we all got families, mothers, brothers, sisters. We don't want to think about someone being harmed. But when we take so much time that we don't teach these things, that's a problem. Now, can we teach everything? No. But when we come to a situation like this, where somebody's making a video in front of the Columbia, Tennessee courthouse, then we need to talk about that, because we need to understand, hey, we're not just picking on you, man. There are still people whose families who still live in that area are affected by what happened 50, 60 years ago, right?
They have relatives who can tell you the stories.
Could tell you exactly what happened, and they look at that and they see police present on the side, on top of that courthouse, and they're saying to themselves, "Hey, man, do you realize that it was the cops that helped to kill my family member? That it was people." I think the other part of this too is, let's remember that even though we're talking about in November 1927, when Henry Colt was killed, there were people, right? As I just said, even what's her name, Ella Gantt, who stood up and did not want this lynching to happen. She said, "I don't want to see an innocent boy killed." This was a white woman standing in front of a mob of almost 300 people. There are heroes that we could talk about too. It's not just, that's why I stress to people, it's not just a black person story, right? Everybody did not align themselves with this. The second one, Cordy Cheek, who was killed in 1933, right? That whole issue that was going on during that time, again, there were whites, right, who stood up, who tried to stop all of this, who wanted this to not happen. And it's so crazy because little simple things, like the whole situation with Cordy, was that it was just an argument that led to someone being arrested because a white man and a black man were fighting. And before you know it, people are being lynched and folks are being killed, right? Same area, same time. And we can talk about the People's Grocery down there in Tennessee also, on and on. But the fact of the matter is, these particular situations, I'm sure people like Jason Aldean and the people who worked on that video probably didn't know any of this, knew none of this. This is the reason behind plaques. This is one of the reasons why I was not in the majority when I said, let's not just destroy statues and monuments. Let's put them someplace as a reference so that we can learn from those mistakes. But just destroying it, we put it out of our mind and out of our thoughts, and these things can be repeated. So I think that my purpose tonight was really just to make sure that we're educated on these things, right? That we know these things. I'm going to drop in our chat the links and things. You can go out and you can read about the different things that happen in this area. I'll leave that situation with the plaque too, that lists the different folks from the 1800s even into the 1900s. But that's really what my take on it is. I just think that we got to be better about talking about it and sharing it when we can.
You know, I'm gonna, if I could add, what frustrates me about this whole situation is I'm just not sure I see anything that can correct it anytime soon, because the people who know history and who have been affected by these kinds of things, they already know that this was a problematic imagery, and the idea was a little problematic. But the people who literally are looking at this going, well, there's nothing wrong with this. This is just about having good morals and not attacking the police and being good Americans and blah, blah, blah. They're dug in. And they're dug in because for years they've been listening to one side of the political aisle telling them that they're right, that they're good people, and that they are the ones that are being, left out of this whole
marginalized. Yeah. That is absolutely true, my brother. They're on this idea that I'm the victim here, and that this is, but it's really something about, if we just take the mentality of those who've come before, who understood that we're stronger together. We're stronger understanding these things together and talking about these things. This is the reason why I look at politics with an open thing. I'm not a Democrat or a Republican. I just think that you got to make the decisions of what's best, what people are talking about. Because if you start getting caught up in these sectarian mentalities, right, and you could get easily convinced into who's the bad guy. And history, you're a history teacher. History has shown us that when you get caught up in those kind of thoughts, that's when a downward slide happens, right? Because now you're caught up in fascism and whatever, and you don't realize fully what you're doing until it hits the fan, right? And then it's like, well, I wasn't advocating that kind of activity, but kind of you were, because you turned a blind eye because it didn't fit your narrative or what you were thinking. So I hope that there's some learning from this. There's some learning from this that comes from all of this. That's my hope. But I agree with you too. It it makes you feel a little certain kind of way because you're like, man, it's like we're not moving forward, right? We're not learning as much as we should and go, okay, let's stop this. We've done this before. let's move on from this lunacy and do something different, man. Let's treat each other like human beings.
I would think so. And, I don't know what it's like on the grassroots level up in Colorado where you're at. I know here in Texas, there's a lot of people here that are dead set on the Texas bravado and we're good Americans and homes, this little good old boy attitude and stuff. There's a lot of it around here. And the frustrating thing for me on this level, when you talk with people, and I've got a couple people that are very close to me and my family that I know for a fact do not have a racist or homophobic bone in their body. Mm-hmm. And yet they still look at the Republican side and just justify so many things they do, not realizing how bad it is. And then there's two analogies really that I really have been wanting to talk about too. Was if you go back, if you ever remember the show Band of Brothers, it was a World War II show, right? On HBO. Fantastic series. Yeah. And they discover a concentration camp in this series. I think it was like the 7th episode out of 8 or something like that. Mm-hmm. And they had some encounters with some of the civilians that they were very proud and they were very almost arrogant and feeling superior and believing that their side must be right. And then they show those same people cleaning up the bodies at that concentration camp. And you can see the portrayal of it was the realization of just, oh my God, is this really what we were supporting? Right. Yeah. And I just think that's where a lot of people eventually need to get to, but I just don't see it happening ever anytime soon. But I was going to liken this whole conversation about the song to this movie that's out these days, this movie about the abduction of children and how, even though we're talking about a topic that is generally bad, and I don't think anybody would disagree with that statement. It's bad to abduct children, right? Yeah. And somehow the right has gotten on this side about how they are the ones who are trying to protect children. And even in a movie where protecting children should be the center of it, the left has gotten very angry because they want to pick apart all the things that are wrong with this movie about, well, the company wasn't really involved and this guy, told some stories and stuff. And even though it's a topic that we know is wrong, people still argue it over it. Yeah. So what's different between that and this song? We know that stuff is wrong, but we still arguing over it, right?
Yeah. But that's the thing, man. They just want to, my son often says it, you're right. Some people just want to argue. They want to be a part of the vitriol. And it doesn't matter what facts are said. It doesn't matter it's just that they want, what's that old saying? They just want to watch the world burn, right? And there are some people who are bellicose and they are like that and they are combative but then there's a point where you have to, I think most rational human beings have to say, hey man, how are we moving forward from this? Right? What are we going to do to stop this? Because you're absolutely right. Right. We got the case right now with the young black woman who may or may not have been grabbed or snatched or whatever. And I was telling somebody, I said, rather it was or she was not, we know that there is a scary amount of women in this country being grabbed and snatched. Me and you have lived in this world long enough to see stories of girls being found in homes decades after they vanished, right? Where men have grabbed them and kept them. And these are real things. And I think if we can learn to agree on those issues and say, look, this is something we do need to pay attention to. Rather there is false, reports, because there's always going to be false reports. People do things for attention or crime or whatever. But let's not lose sight on the fact that there are still women being taken, young girls being taken, right, and never heard from again. And so I see what you're saying, my brother. People get so caught up, man, and trying to figure out argument, but focus on what the real point is. What's the point here, right?
But it's about being on the right side these days of the argument, because I don't think you could find very many people. Right? You could say that the images of this video, for instance, is images of lynching. It is racial undertones about racial profiling protesters. These are things, and then building up the good old boy image, right? A lot of people would say that that's wrong, and they're still arguing about it, because I don't think you could find very many people in this country that would sit there and go, yeah, lynching's okay.
No,
they agree on that premise. They agree on the premise, right? But yet they're still arguing over it because one side doesn't believe that they could possibly be advocating that with this kind of imagery. No, that's not what we're advocating at all.
No.
And that's the problem. It's not about what because there's a lot of things we agree on. We just still argue over it.
But even if we disagree, right? If we disagree in a way where, like, man, I don't agree. Like me and you eat the burger, and I say, man, I don't want ketchup on my burger, right? And you say, man, I do, right? And we disagree with it. Yeah. Okay, we still go eat a burger, right? Yeah. we both still gonna enjoy a burger, however way we're gonna eat it, right?
Yeah, but you anti-ketchup people, anti-ketchup people, you're what's wrong with the world.
Exactly. That's we're so caught up on it, right? And look, the biggest thing is the meat good? Did they cook it right? But we're so caught up on what you put on and what you didn't put on it. Man, look, one thing, I think we said it before when I had you on the show before. One thing that we get, I am extremely appreciative of in the military is different perspectives, right? We got to depend on our people, and we hear different perspectives. But the thing that we always find is that we are more similar than we are dissimilar, right? The way we grow up, the things that we've experienced, the way our parents taught us, right? Those things are very similar, but somebody tells us that we're different. They put us in a category and they highlight this separation, and we get caught up on that one ketchup mustard issue and don't realize, hey man, we both like burgers, right?
Yeah.
We both like to eat burgers.
But then you got the hot dog eater like Tommy Tuberville over here trying to tell you how you're supposed to think about being a hamburger eater.
Exactly. I usually blame that on Eric. He's that type of person. He said, I want to see Jeffrey Epstein list of everyone who came to that island. They have it. Okay, here's the thing. Jeffrey Epstein right now, Eric, he don't care about it. Wherever he is, whatever he is, he's not here anymore. Right. I'm sure there's a lot of horrible things that have happened that we don't know. Trace and I disagree with Russia, Ukraine thing, but I agree with everything Trace is saying. Yeah, we could disagree on certain things, but it doesn't mean that we go to war and start destroying the world because I don't agree with you. But that people do that. When we ignore that, what happens to someone due to barriers, we're vulnerable to new threats because it didn't happen to anyone we care about. That's a true statement.
Look, I'll be honest with you. I was on I had a conservative view about 20 years ago about one thing, remember, and I forget what year it came out. When was Rodney King? When was that? What year was that? Rodney King incident.
That was like
90 something, right?
Yeah, 90.
Early.
Let's look that up. I can't think of exactly the date.
I'll be honest with you. I was in the ones that thought that kind of thing was a rarity. It was 92. An isolated incident.
Yeah.
But that was the days before everybody had a video in their pocket, right? And I have to say, during the age of social media, where I still do believe that most cops, even though some of them are on a little bit of a power trip, they don't mean any harm to anybody. I do believe that because the cops that I've known are like that. But yet I can say that the things that happened to Rodney King have happened far more frequently than I ever believed.
Yeah.
And it's because I was never in an area to see that. So when I look at people like these small town people who have never been around any of this kind of violence or any of these kind of things, I kind of see their perspective, and well, they don't believe it happens because they never see it.
Yeah.
They
Yeah.
don't.
Well, it's like when I was, I had a sailor that worked for me, and he told me, he said, Eddie, you changed my thoughts on black men. He's like, I don't want you to be offended. I said, I'm not offended. We just, how we always sitting there talking at night on the watch. And I said, I'm not offended, man. He was like, no, because I was always taught, or what I saw was black guys and baggy jeans and all this. We are, because that's the image that was being pushed out, right? For as he was growing up. And I said, well, that's the thing, man. That's a stereotype, right? Everything has a stereotype, right? You got the cowboy stereotype and all these different, there are stereotypes, but you got to understand that that's not everybody, right? You got to meet people for what they are, who they are. Somebody could be from Chicago, and you think automatically now, because of all the violence, oh, you must be a criminal, right? You must understand you got criminal. No, man, everybody's not a criminal. I have criminal family members, right? I can honestly say who have gone to jail, but everybody does. Everybody has somebody in their family who probably just ain't right, right? Somewhere down the line on some part of your family, and maybe not even somebody that you know, but until you like, oh man, that was my cousin, right? It's just what it is. But yeah, we got to move beyond all of that and just really start trying to understand we're all human beings. One of the things I try to do on Erudition, man, is try to teach history in a way where I'm not trying to be biased. I'm going to give you the fact of what it is, right? However uncomfortable it may be. And then I'm going to tell you, my wife always tells me, she's like, Eddie, share some other people, white people and Asian people who may have, I was like, I do. I try very hard to expose those things because I want us to understand we're all in this together. That's what a lot of our ancestors, a lot of them polarized themselves and didn't understand. But there were a lot of people who were in 1800s, 1900s, who did understand, right? Read some of those slave narratives about men and women falling in love with a white person and can't be with them, or with a black person and couldn't be with them. So they lived down the road, right, from them, and they had whole families together where they could not be together. That's insane, but that's America, right? That's what we had to live through. Tell those stories, right? So that we understand that we're not there anymore. Love who you're going to love. Take care of the family that you have, right? Maybe then we won't have all of this shooting and lunacy that we're seeing right now because there's no empathy, right? No connection. But that's my take on it.
Well, you're right. And I do think most people would agree with that, in all honesty. Even the people that disagree with everything else, there are just too many people that don't want to admit what they don't know.
Yeah.
They don't know things, and I have zero idea what life is like in a small town in Alabama. I have no idea what it's like. I have no idea what it's like to live in a city where I was the minority, or even a town. Yeah. I just don't know what those things are like. So for me to sit there and try to arrogantly say, oh, well, these people don't understand, it's disingenuous for me to, and I'll be honest with you, it was meeting people like you and many people in the Navy who came from all walks of life, who taught me about things that I would have, or, told me stories of their own that I would have never been able to relate to, so you have to understand it.
Yeah, man. I that's the same. That's my same feeling. What I got directly from the military, that care, because look, when we go overseas and we're all coming off that ship and we're together, that's us, right?
Yep.
In this whole area. And, I need to know that you got my back, I got your back, right? If we need to run, get away, whatever's going on, right? So I think
I got a deal for you, Joe.
Yeah. Sure. We went through some crazy, when you go to crazy places, man, and you just, you realize, man, I'm glad my boy is here, because I don't know this don't look right here, right? What is this boy saying? Took my car to get fixed, told me they can't get 2-3 weeks. My white boyfriend took some car in, said they can do it. And next day reminds me of the blind people video. Oh, that blind folks video. We gotta get into a situation and where I think the new generation, to be fair, this current generation, I think they're better at it in some ways than my generation and my mother's generation. And I'm hoping that it gets better and better. There's a percentage of people who still advocate bias and bull, but I think to a greater extent, I see a lot more amalgam of people understanding. And that's why I like the fact that, like I saw my grandma was on here earlier, my grandma Donna. We have a interracial family, right? I think that it's when you understand that we're all together, human together, and everybody doesn't, and you're going to run into those people. I'm just hoping that those people eventually become more and more the minority as everybody starts to invest in each other's families and intermingle and intermarry and all of this, because now you're no longer going to have somebody, feeling like I don't understand that culture. Well, you do, right? Because you could be that voice in the madness to say, hey man, I don't know where you're coming from right there, but let's go talk to the guy before we go and just assume, like you said earlier in one of your comments, Eric, before we just assume something based on the way that guy dressed, the way that guy looks, and you don't know him like that at all, right? So yeah, I get it, man. I don't think me or Tracy are here telling you that there's no bigotry, racism, or whatever in here. No,
it's still around.
It's there, right? But we got to make a difference.
I think as teaching high school students for the last 5 years, and I was in education for 3 years before that even, I am encouraged by the number of people that set all of that aside and look at it as they don't understand why it's a thing. Yeah. I am encouraged because I do realize that even here in Texas and in small towns around here, there are people that they're trying to teach their kids about who the good guys and who the bad guys are. Mm-hmm. And I'm glad to see that far more younger people are looking at that and going, I don't really buy into that anymore. I'm encouraged. But several years ago we talked about things getting better. That was a comment I made. And somebody else had gotten on there and said, no, it's not better. It was like, I don't mean better as in it's an end result where we're going to be, but I think the track is still going up, even though we're on what is really kind of a bump right now. I still think the track is going up for us to be doing right someday. Yeah.
I think we're getting there. I try to raise my kids. I tell people, I said, we were talking earlier about the police, right? If the police are, from having friends who are police officers, if they're being told before they go out, that there is a killer or there is theft, there are violent people out here. They know that. And when we get a black kid and a cop, both young, a lot of times, meeting on a road and meeting together with stereotypes, if we don't start to talk about these things and be honest about these things, that's when we get into a problem, right? Because that cop is coming to the car with a thought in his mind of what he's been told, and the young person in the car has a thought of what they've been told about the cop. And then even if the person in the car, as I tell my sons, even if you sped and you were speeding, take the ticket, get home. Don't get into an irrelevant argument based on something that did not have anything to do with that particular situation. And we're having people tense up, get so upset on both sides. And now we got one cop, like you said, who may have an issue, right? And he takes that issue and he goes too far. Or you may have a cop who never had an issue, but when he walks up to that car and you give him every stereotype that his sergeant told him to expect, he's just going to assume, right? Oh, you're that guy, right? You're exactly what they said. And I think that what we really need to start doing is just having a conversation like we're doing tonight. And when we see things, talk about it. Talk about it openly, honestly. Get it out there in the ether so that whoever sees this can say, oh, yeah, okay, I see the part of it. I see that side of it. I listen to country music, right? I had my sons both listen to Aldean's song or watch his video, gave them no commentary. And when they finished watching it, I asked them, I said, what did you think about that video? Both of them separately at different times said, is he talking about lynching? That was their perspective, right? I had my wife watch it. She said the same thing. She's like, well, you know what he's talking about. And I said, so he may not have intended that. But when you got 3 different or 4 different people getting the same conclusion, you know what I'm saying, who watched it separately, no bias whatsoever, yeah, we got to think, man. There's a reason why country music television pulled it off the TV, right?
Right. And again, that's what I'm saying. And here's the thing. I can honestly see from his point of view going, no, that's not what I meant at all. But because he's been listening to people for so long tell him,
yeah,
these people rioting are bad. These people who are fighting the police, they're bad. And all this crime from these people are bad. And this flag burning and flag kneeling and blah, blah, blah. It's bad. So he's thinking, well, I'm a proud American.
A good American.
I can honestly believe if he thinks that he's just trying to think that he's perpetuating the proud American small town good old boy kind of trope when he's really not. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that's, again, he doesn't understand the other perspective. And that's why I try to look at it anyway. And I try to observe. He's got better music, by the way.
Yeah, he does. He has better music. I was more taken aback because I thought to myself, I was like, dude, you were on the site of a mass shooting, man. That would change my life. I'd be like, certain things, hey, bro.
The mass shooting.
Yeah.
He was on stage for the deadliest mass shooting ever.
Yes, ever. Right. And that was a crazy situation. Right. So I just think you would be like, wait a minute. let me look at this when I get the cut. Hey, I don't know.
Well, just going with the attitude, how come he didn't take his good old boy up them stairs and deal with it?
Exactly.
I mean, just saying.
Yeah, you a good old boy. You gonna go out and me and my dad were joking the other day. We're like, there was a point in time where you mentioned it earlier, where we watched like the Dukes of Hazzard, right?
Yeah.
And that I say that because that's in the song, the good old boys. And you thinking, man, I remember a time when all kids, black, white, whatever, we were all riding around, pushing our General Elite car, going yeehaw.
Jumping whatever you can.
Yeah, jumping whatever you can, right? Seeing situations going, man, I bet I could jump that, right? So
yeah.
So I mean, it's so crazy right now, right? I think if we could get back to that kind of mentality, man, where everybody just was like, look, we just having good fun.
I'm pretty sure I was in college before it dawned on me that when they said the General Lee, they were talking about the Confederate General Lee. I was like, wait a second, and I just thought, because I never believed that was the intent of that show.
No, it wasn't. It was just a Southern thing, and that was something that, like, I didn't know for long. To show you how much it was for me, I didn't realize that the Confederate flag was on top of the car, on the hood. I didn't know that.
No, that's not the Confederate flag. That's our Southern heritage. You see,
I'm just saying. I never, dude. I had the Dukes of Hazzard board game.
Yeah.
I had the car.
Right? I had the car. Yeah.
So I never was like, oh my God, right? So it took me years to realize, oh, that's what that was. And I understand the sensitivity of it, but as a child, and I got to give credit to my mother. I wanted that because that was popular. My mother wasn't like, you know what? No.
We're going to have a talk first.
Yeah. She just, he's a kid. He wants to play. He likes this show. That's what this is, And I just think that we got to get better. All right, Teddy, I see your comment because you just put me a comment. What did you say here? Before we get ready to get off here, I think you said a lot of things. I just took a social, just a bad look in the social climate that we're in Armorburg. That's true.
Yep, you mentioned that earlier.
And with the gun culture that we have right now, inciting a call to arms is not what we need. I can't agree with that too, Teddy. Let's be careful with that gun thing. I think it's time we behave in a progressive fashion and not dwell on nonsense or allow it to be trending or to go viral. Yeah, but we do gotta talk about it, Tina, when we see it, because we can't just say, hey, that's nonsense and walk away from it, because what is nonsense to me and you may be the word of God to somebody else, right? And you got to give a differing perspective, because if not, some people will take that slated perspective and go do really crazy things, right? Or launch them down a path to do crazy things. And that's what we really want to try to prevent. All right, Tracy, man, we're at our hour, man. I appreciate you, because you just messaged me just as I was getting ready to call. I was like, yeah, Tracy would be perfect to talk about this.
Yeah. Well, one of the things that, again, like, when it's in the kind of the context that I stated earlier, I don't necessarily remember or know all the details of all these little historical events. Yeah. But I understand the big picture stuff. And to me, the most pertinent part of teaching history class is understanding how it affects the world today. Yes. And how we do become, as Tina said, become more progressive. Yes. And move away from those things, because we do have to decide at some point, look, we're going to have to stop arguing over the little stuff and learn to get along and be better.
Yep, I agree.
We are. So
I agree, my brother. All right, my brother. Thank you so much for coming on, man. And
thanks for having me, Eddie.
And being on here with me and discussing this topic. Because, for me, I just thought the other day, I was like, what is this? Right. Yeah. So, but then I have enough background in having different friends and different people from different parts of it all over the world that I was like, yeah, I can see. I did see understand where some people thought that was coming from, but I also saw the other side. So I'm glad, man, that we were able to get on here and discuss those perspectives. All you folks out there who were on here and participated and joined into this conversation, I appreciate you all. I did not know if we were going to be on today because we were having crazy weather. I know crazy weather is all over the country right now, but we had weather so bad early today that the house was shaking. And I was like, well, let me look out here, make sure ain't nothing for to blow away. So we got
we're in severe drought here in Texas.
Oh man, y'all ain't getting no water. See, y'all having a weather that we usually have, because we get really hot here, but we don't. We're getting a unseasonable amount of rain to a point that our roads, just as we were getting ready to come on, they told us that one of our roads flooded out that leads out of here. And I saw the clip of it, the road washing down, just washing away.
Right.
So it's like,
stay dry.
But ladies and gentlemen, thank you. Tracy, thank you again. Hey, all of you all. Oh, Teddy's going to get me because I did not put this banner on here. Ted, you have to remember to put this banner on here, because I don't remember all the time. I'm getting older. Not old, but older. And so bye. If you want to help Erudition Network, that's our Cash App. Anything that you send will be used towards our cameras, our microphones, different things that we use. We got a course that we're getting ready to come out with and do. So that would be greatly appreciated. That's what that ticker is. I put that down there for you guys. I don't care if it's $5, $2, $1. I don't really care. Anything that you do will always go to help us with this program. Again, to my friend, my Navy buddy, my brother from another mother, Tracy, I thank you so much, my brother. Right. And to all of you all, we will see you again this coming Thursday. Next Thursday. Tina will be on Monday. The boys will be on Wednesday. If I got that wrong, I believe it's Wednesday. And we will see you again on Erudition next week. All right. So later, Tracy. Yep. Thanks, brother.